This episode is about various underwater ruins that could possibly have some connection to Atlantis. And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna touch a few unrelated subjects. First of all, the flat earth theory. After receiving countless requests to do so, I was told I have to include it, so I will do it. And then an interesting question that I received from a viewer regarding the Roman conquest of France. And then a few words for those who wish to contribute voiceover to my videos about the remote viewing project and about sending me various additional resources and ebooks. Varieties of geographical locations have been suggested as possible spot for Atlantis, and in a sense it is possible that a number of them are correct at the same time, because often the word Atlantis is used to signify any advanced ancient civilization that we know very little about. And since the legends suggest that Atlantis had a number of cities and districts, it is possible that many of them were built following this round city plan that we usually associate with Atlantis. In addition, they might have had outposts in the neighboring areas or even worldwide. Possibly the outposts were built following the same round design. It is also possible that those who survived after the terrible destruction of Atlantis, they have been building their settlements following the general idea of that round city plan of Atlantis. So the conclusion is, not everything that is round is the capital of Atlantis. The Atlantic Ocean seems to be the most promising perspective for finding well-preserved underwater ruins of an ancient advanced civilization. Most map providers have already switched to what is called most recent and detailed map of the ocean bottom. In reality, it is the most smudged version with least detail. Some providers still keep small portions of the previous version of a more detailed map, but I'm not aware of anybody displaying online the maps we could see just a few years ago on the internet. Here you see them side by side. On the left is the most recent one. Obviously, details have been simply removed. These are the Azore Islands in the Atlantic Ocean, the place where, according to legends, Atlantis should have been situated. And there is a good reason for smudging the images, because this is what the sailor boats spotted with their radar exactly in this area. This pyramid looks like just one of the many cones that we can see on the map of the ocean bottom. Possibly some of the other cones would look like this if a close-up is shown, and that's the reason for obliterating them gradually from the maps. Now, the radar images of the pyramid could reach the public because it was a private sailing boat that made them by chance. Obviously, people were waiting a follow-up, and it appeared. A very well written article appeared in the media that a team of very enthusiastic, extremely enthusiastic scientists went on the spot to check and make further discoveries. And then the article assures us that they went there and there was actually nothing. But what about the pyramid that appeared on the radar images? How come that is nothing? Well, the explanation provided was that the radar of the sailor boat was not giving enough details, and that's why it looked like pyramid, but actually it is not. But then the question is why the team with the better radar did not publish any images or any scientific report as such. After all, in the beginning of the article, they were explaining to us in detail how well equipped is the second expedition to document the truth and everything that they find, and yet they publish no finds at all. Now, very similar and much better studied are the findings in the Caribbean region. At least some 20 of them show the necessity of rewriting the history of the full region and, in some cases, the official history of the full humanity. For example, these are images of what lays almost 700 meters below sea level. That's a lot. According to mainstream geologists, it should have taken tens of thousands of years for this surface to sink that much. And then their penguin colleagues from the history department assure us that this is what we were doing more or less in that time period. But if we were really too busy chewing fur at that time, then who built the 40 meters high pyramids? The large platform and ruins next to the island of Andros are very interesting. Well, first of all, the platform is covered with a couple of rows of megalithic stones. As the ocean currents shift the sands on the bottom here and there, various parts of the platform are being exposed while others get buried. So it is quite huge, probably at least a couple of square kilometers, means at least the size of a very huge public square. Many of the blocks have regular shape, rectangular. They are placed in a couple of rows. Some of them have tool marks, and most amazingly, there are even some ruins of buildings. These are some of the building blocks laying around. This is how the so-called temple looks on an aerial photo, and these are the actual remains of the walls underwater. Now, this is an image taken by Dr. Greg Little. He didn't really have permission to excavate further, but the researcher before him discovered that the walls go at least 2 meters deep in the sand, and that wasn't the end. There was no bottom found, no floor, so to say. So Dr. Little and his wife Laura Little, they are the ones that did most of the work on this site. They could only confirm by scattering a bit of sand around the walls that indeed they do continue in the sand downwards for they don't know how much. And there are a couple more sites with ruins around this area, this island of Andros. They're listed on their website, the website of Dr. Greg and Laura Little. Some steps again, part of those ruins. Here you can get some idea of the size of the slabs. Definitely we are dealing with megalithic buildings. These ruins don't fit in the official history of the region, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily related to Atlantis. They could be part of Atlantis as well, we just don't know. But the overall building style is quite similar or maybe even identical with some antique ports of the Mediterranean region. And since in the episode about America we saw that the culture of the antique Mediterranean was also present in the Americas as well. Maybe they built these ports. Anything is possible. Here we see some Romanesque looking architectural elements made out of marble. Now the diver is about to reach the first one of them. Here, I don't know if you noticed, but he starts cleaning it up. And this is another one, or the first piece, but cleaned up of the sand. Here is the image of it rotated. Maybe it is easier to see in this way. This is the material, the type of marble of which these elements have been made, and it's a full pile of them, or I don't know, or even ruins. Dr. Greg Little only says that they appear to be part of a shipwreck, he says apparently, but it doesn't explain why it is apparent. Also, column-like pieces around and a rectangular one, including a couple of fluted columns, all of this in this very area. So yes, it could be a shipwreck, or they may simply convince themselves it is, because still very few people question the more or less recent history. Many more are inclined to question the very ancient history of many thousands of years ago. But for those who don't question the recent ones, they sometimes tend to make their lives more comfortable by convincing themselves to believe various fictions. So they have a couple of spots with various types of columns. Some of the columns have been taken away already by the penguins, others have remained. And just a couple of days ago I found out that the characters I've been calling penguins have a proper scientific name. They are called quackademics. This is just so remarkably suitable, exactly like the frogs. They are so loud, quack quack, and you can't hear the other animals. And the same way the mass media is so loud with their quack science that people barely get information about the real interesting stuff, like the actual scientific work of the Littles family. The quackademics have their own crowned king even, Hawass. Although the Bimini Road is by far the most famous find in the area, the others are not less interesting. And all these others don't even have proper names yet. They appear to be harbors or jetties in the nearby islands. They have anchors, they have many slabs that are perfectly rectangularly shaped, and some of them are even in shallow waters. Why are they not studied properly yet? It is not a very recent discovery. We haven't just heard of them, they are known since decades. Well, the Quackademia took serious measures to ensure that proper excavations are not done, because it's obvious that such excavations would seriously damage the reputation of the quacks, and people may even stop believing them, even though they continue to wear their Armani suits. And so the quack penguins made two documentaries and aired them on prime channels with millions of viewers, and presented the findings in the Bahamas for something they're actually not. With those two documentaries, they created a hoax that possibly these ruins could have a natural origin, and supported their hoax with lies. For example, they suggested that the Bimini Road could be just a bedrock with cracks. How can it be bedrock with cracks if we have numerous perfectly rectangular shaped building blocks moreover standing 2 or 3 on the top of each other. Well, they simply missed out that information in their so-called documentaries. Instead of that, they fully relied on the words only of so-called researchers. Some sort of corporation was quickly given exclusive rights to do any research in the area, and the experts of that corporation, well, they didn't find it really necessary to go into details and dive in water, but the conclusion was already that it is natural bedrock. And as far as the columns and other architectural things, well, they must be from shipwrecks, you know. And then further on in these documentaries, instead of showing the actual site where many stones have holes in them, they simply reported that there are no stones at all that show any signs of manipulation, although many of them are simply pretty much standard anchors, identical to the ones used in the ancient harbors of Europe, for example. And what about the numerous megalithic stones that have perfect rectangular shape? Did the special plum trees in the region start bearing them on their branches? But even these lies were not enough for their documentaries. They went way further. Employing software for image manipulation, they made 2 blocks that are found next to each other to look as if they belong. The lines in the stone are connected and they belong to the same slab. Dr. Greg Little was very surprised when he saw that image in the documentary. He examined it and he found out it is simply an image manipulation and not an original one. And then when artifacts or stones of intelligent design appear, they hide under very misleading labels like anomalous. What does it mean, anomalous? It is perfectly normal to have an artifact if there was something going on in the past there. Scientific conclusions should be made based on those artifacts, actually. People who label them as anomalous don't understand the very basics of the meaning of science. Now these ruins are not observed just underwater. In some cases they continue on the shore. Very similar stone structures are seen in Wisconsin and all the way in Ecuador. This is the casing of the pyramidal structures found over there, or at least the outer casing. It seems treasure hunters made holes in the pyramids by dynamite explosions, and over there one can see that there are more layers inside. So at this stage we can only say, really, God knows, are the ruins at the Bahamas left over of Atlantis, or some survivors of Atlantis mixing with other tribes? Or was it the giants that also lived in America? We don't know even when. Or was it yet another party that we know nothing about yet? Anything is possible. The actual history of the Americas is as clear as fog. And only when we start gradually understanding who and when lived there and what did they do and build, then we can start making hypotheses about the origin of the ruins in the Bahamas. There is yet another story of pyramids and crystals, and again connected with the Bahamas, and that's the story of Dr. Ray Brown, a naturopathic practitioner from Arizona and a treasure hunter. So he claims that he has been searching for treasures in the area, and he found underwater glass or crystal pyramids, and even a bowl of crystal that he found in some sort of chamber underwater. His story doesn't sound very credible though. First of all, okay, he claims that his equipment went out of order due to storm, and that's why he would not capture any images, but then why he never returned to the spot? That's weird. Treasure hunters are very persistent actually. They keep returning until they don't get hold of the full booty. And on the top of everything, his story was broadcasted on the History Channel. Do you see the H logo? This H stands for hoax. Only very carefully screened hoaxes are allowed on the History Channel. Hoaxes that will make the fog denser, and the very fact that Ray Brown was allowed to tell his own story in detail and be broadcasted to the world on history, well, it looks more like an attempt to discredit the alternative history researchers and present them in charlatanian light. But of course, most interesting appear to be the underwater pyramids off the coast of Cuba. It's a full complex. The stones, as reported by the discoverers, are some roughly 2 by 5 meters and are of a variety that is not local to the area. This is a photograph of one of the pyramids. As the research was happening, we read that scientific institutions are working on deciphering the hieroglyphs found down there, and yet, till date, for so many years, we still have not obtained images of those hieroglyphs. Findings of this type are extremely uncomfortable for the academics. So what to do if they tell us again that it fell off a ship, or that it grows on hortensia plants? Well, they may start looking like stupid quacks, but they don't want to look like that. They want to look like quackademics. So instead of trying to explain what this is, they explain to people that what it is not, and it is not historic ruins, and the reason for which it is not is because the academics say so. The only proof presented were their expensive suit and impressively sounding titles. Believe it or not, but there are people with scientific titles who openly say that there cannot be any submerged city at that depth off the coast of Cuba, simply because these lands have been on the surface so many thousands of years ago, when there could not have been any civilization to build them. That's why it's impossible that they exist. But how come they obtained their scientific diplomas if they are not aware of stuff that is taught in primary school and sometimes even kindergarten? And that stuff is that the scientific knowledge should be based on facts and observations, on real things that you observe around. Instead of that, they refuse to observe because it doesn't match their theories. And despite the ridiculousness of all this, the propaganda of the academics gave excellent results. And here's an excellent example of those results. Another absolutely unrelated expedition, scientific one, is in open sea, exploring and scanning the sea bottom. This is what the crew wrote in their diary. Some of the rubble on the sea bottom, it means, was so angular and rectangular in shape that the pilot joked that we had found the lost city of Atlantis. That observation was made off the east coast of the United States, but that's how it all ended. A small note in the diary, just one published image, and that was the end, because people were convinced there cannot be any historic ruins underwater, because they cannot be. The academics say so. Now, what about maps of Atlantis? Do you remember that clever chap from the previous episode, Philip Buache? His map of Antarctica is a proof that he had a connection to that mysterious knowledge of the survivors that we are trying to trace. Well, if he knew such amazing details about Antarctica, the location of its mountain ranges, and how does it look without the ice covering, then it is logical to suggest that he could have known much more. Why, on one of his maps, he places a huge island in between Africa and South America? The island is not there on his other maps. Was he making a historic map? The penguin explanation for this island is that, cartographers in those times were stupid and used to place fantasy islands all over the globe as they wish. I'm not sure I want to believe this explanation, because we are talking about times that are only 300 years ago. He was the most respected royal cartographer of France. I seriously doubt that a man of such a position would do such actually illegal stuff, placing islands here and there without any proper consideration. The outlining of the parts of Africa and South America that are on the map are very, very correct. Doesn't look like a fantasy map at all. I don't know if this mystery island has anything to do with Atlantis, but anything is possible, because if indeed the drama of Atlantis sinking took place some 20-30,000 years ago, and considerable movement of land masses took place during and after that, and polar shifts on the top of everything, well, the Philippe Bois map may look odd now, but that doesn't mean that it looked odd under those circumstances in those times. And as far as ruins of Atlantis, the way it is depicted by the legends as highly advanced technological civilization, probably they simply lie unexplored at the bottom of the ocean and wait for the time when man will decide to switch off his TV and will ask himself, who am I? Where do I come from? It is also possible that to say that they lay down at the bottom of the ocean undiscovered is not very correct. Probably they are very well mapped and discovered already, but because ordinary people can't see without the help of technology what is on the bottom of the ocean, they are simply not aware because the maps of the ocean bottom are being continuously edited to put us in an artificial reality and make us unaware of our heritage. For example, do you notice the line of regular dots? This is that very same area of Cuba where the pyramids were detected by the radars. So even these dots, as the later versions of the maps come up, supposedly improved, these dots gradually get scrambled and they start disappearing, start looking like something else. And finally, they disappear completely. This is the best, according to them, version. And what is even more disturbing than that is that when they improve the version, they delete the historic version, change the dates, and if you go to Google Earth and see the bottom of the ocean and go back in history using their tool, you will be shown the current version with old date. You will not be shown the previous version, which was obviously much closer to the reality. Look at the map now, everything smudged, smooth, flat plateaus, the sizes of continents all over the place. This is not realistic. So much about Atlantis, and now due to numerous requests I'm gonna cover the flat earth theory. So many people started believing recently that this is how the actual globe of the earth looks, flat, and they have been sending me hundreds of links to educate me about this theory. I love to educate myself about the new theories, but I was hoping that their videos and materials will start with the most obvious question that everybody will ask. Then how come people who do trans-Pacific travel, for example, fly from Santiago to Sydney, or do trans-Pacific cruise in that area, how come they don't notice that they're traveling 20 times longer in terms of time? They would grow long beards by the time they arrive. But this question was not answered in their materials in the beginning, so I just had to close the videos, and that is the end of my flat earth review. Now, this is a very nice question about the Roman Empire. I like viewers who think. And she's asking me, if there was no Roman Empire, then who conquered France? Who was fighting against whom? And who was Julius Caesar and others? Okay, all that I can confirm for sure is that there were some wars somewhere in the history of France. Now, was there a war at this particular moment in history that you're referring to is still very much under question, because the events could have been shifted in time, or the war that you're referring to could be merely a phantom, literally a phantom of an actual event that took place elsewhere and was later on transferred to the history of France. In addition to that, the very definition of who these Gauls were is questionable as well. So if we have a mathematical equation with a couple of unknown variables, guess how much correct the answer would be to this equation. I also understand that it is extremely difficult for many to start living in the realistic world in which we know absolutely very little about the true history. We are accustomed to need the answers of these equations, otherwise we feel insecure, and that's why I present the closest that I have to an answer, and that is the work of Anatoly Fomenko, his new chronology. Although I definitely do see some minor mistakes and problems with the new chronology as well, these problems are not nearly as severe as those of the penguin history. The books are available for free online in English. Probably you will find a couple of volumes about the Roman times. Caesar is a personality with countless phantom reflections throughout history, maybe as much as Jesus. I think they are contestants for the first place of persona with the maximum number of phantoms. But amongst all these dozens of phantoms, how to figure out which is the real one, in which country did he live, how did he call himself, by what name? Well, I wish I knew myself. That's why I started this newearth project, the aim of which is to recover the real history. And because that may take a few years at least, meanwhile, for those who cannot live without the feeling that they have the answers of the equation, I recommend the new chronology books. And now, the next topic, the voiceover. I feel the need to get a bit of help in terms of voiceover. That means that the future videos would have a small part only with somebody else's voiceover, but as far as some of the older ones are concerned, they would need to be seriously redone. Not only because the English is not so smooth, but also because of extremely poor recording quality. So, for those who are interested, I made a video. I will post a link to it in the description of this video, because that one is unlisted. You will not find it in the list of my videos. And I received a few responses, but for those who sent me some sample, it seems that the microphone quality is the main problem. It is the main problem for me as well. That's why many people are complaining the volume is too low, but if I put it high up, it starts hissing. So if you are interested in contributing, please first of all send me a 2-minute sample of any of the videos that are listed there and need to be redone, not a full video, just to see how is the microphone quality, because that seems to be the main issue. And then for those who participated in the remote viewing projects but cannot find the link to the video where I reveal the targets, there is a link in the description. Also, lots of viewers are sending me daily many emails with various resources, some of them extremely interesting, many of them I have included in my videos afterwards, but the problem comes when the resources are very long. If you're sending me a video that is 1 or 2 hours long or a full book, please be aware that I will need many incarnations if I have to go through all this material, and then people even feel offended if I don't do it. So if your video is longer than 10 minutes or the article is longer than an A4 page, please include a summary that shows what are the main artifacts that I haven't yet mentioned in my videos that are new to me. Something like a summary of the interesting stuff, so that you can excite my interest to actually view your resource. Thank you very much for your understanding in this regard. And then one way to contribute to my research, because many people have offered to do that, is by sending me ebooks that I need. What happened is that I had to reinstall my computers a number of times and lost a lot of data, a lot of valuable books, and if you happen to have them by chance in an e-format, I read my books by listening to them. I convert them from text format to audio. That is why I'm asking only for books that you may already have and they happen to be in an electronic format. The books that I'm interested in are all the books from the following authors: Jane Roberts, Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, and Andy Tomlinson.